Chapter 21. The Sentinel. Voidkin spilled forward in a tide of writhing limbs and smoke, blurring the world around them. Kai barely had time to register Eira's movement before she was in front of him, her sword a streak of silver thrust clean through the first creature. It evaporated into smoke with a dying screech. Then the others came. Each strike carved through their wisp-like bodies, cutting tendrils and limbs that dissolved on contact, dispersing into the veil as if they had never existed. Kai tried to keep up, but he couldn't track her. Eira's movements blurred past anything he could follow, and somehow each blow landed exactly where it needed to. He followed close behind. Another shadow lunged from her flank with claws outstretched. Eira didn't break stride. She dipped her fingertips in dust and thrust her free hand forward, tracing a glowing symbol in the air. A shield of crystalline perpetual materialized between her and the strike. The Voidkin's claws hit hard, and the creature ricocheted somewhere into the veil. She staggered, but the shield held. Kai could only watch as the horde pressed in. Tendrils lashed from every angle, impossible to predict. For every creature she cut down, two more emerged from the darkness. The crystal quaked in Kai's grip, a storm of perpetual clawing to get out of him. His pulse thundered. Sweat slid down his temple and stung his eyes. He locked his jaw and held the blade down at his side, arm shaking with the effort. A second wave broke from the smoke. 3 Voidkin abreast, their bodies stretching thin and long as they came. Eira sidestepped the first one and let its claws rake empty air, then lunged at its open flank on the end of the swing. The second she met with her shield, absorbing the blow at an angle that sent it skidding wide. The third she couldn't reach in time. It caught her across the ribs. The leather saved her from the blow, but the force spun her half a step off balance, and Kai saw her recover just a breath slower than she should have. His grip tightened on the crystal. Now, gotta do it now. No, Kai, save it, she shouted, reading his intention. Eira drove forward, blade opening the third creature from shoulder to hip before it could press the advantage. It dissolved mid-shriek. She didn't stop to breathe. Several more were already closing. A tendril lashed toward Kai, but the shadow met Eira's steel instead. She severed it in one motion, and the creature reeled backwards with a sound like chittering teeth. She pivoted to the next strike, and the impact jolted up through her arm. "Where are they?" she asked with flustered breath, and Kai understood the question. She meant Raven and Korric. The crystal pulsed hot against his palm, urgent, almost pleading. He could feel how close it was. One motion, one release, and he could scatter half the horde in front of her. Every instinct told him to move. Only her command, still sharp in his memory, kept his feet planted. Her blade blurred. Parry, deflect, strike. But Kai caught it, a drag in her recovery, a tremor she hadn't had a minute ago. Her eyes wide and searching for an opening that wasn't coming. She was slowing considerably now. The Voidkin sensed it too. They pressed in tighter, shadows pulling at her feet. Tendrils snapping from every direction until she had nothing left but desperate defense. She caught one claw on her shield, angled it wide, and missed the second entirely. It clipped her shoulder. She staggered, boots sliding in the dirt, and she barely got the shield up in time to catch a third strike meant for her throat. The force of it drove her back a full step. "There's too many," Eira's voice cracked on the last word. Then, a gruff, taunting laugh cut through the din of battle. "Oi, you mangy buggers. It's me you should be after." Kai whirled, pulse hammering, and found Korric cresting the ridge behind them, the cannon finally free from his back. He swung it onto his shoulder like it weighed nothing, planting his feet in the loose dirt. His eyes swept the Voidkin below with unsettling calm. "Korric!" Kai's voice flooded with relief.
All right then, enough fannying about.
Korric grinned, slapping the side of the weapon.
Get your asses to those gates and blow them open.
The cannon hummed to life, deep and resonant. Lights and indicators along its frame ignited. Ancient script crawled to life across the barrel as it began to rotate. The Voidkin twisted toward the new threat, tendrils slithering and snapping in his direction. Korric's grin only widened.
That's right, you ugly sods.
The hum climbed higher. Lights ignited in sequence along the first tier. 1, 2, 3. Then the second tier joined, quickening, and the third followed faster still. All 3 layers cycling and overlapping until the barrel blazed bright enough to throw shadows across the ridge. The interval shortened, half a second, a quarter. The air around the weapon crackled, but his mirror barely contained. The whine climbing higher until the runes blurred into a single continuous blaze. For Kai, time seemed to slow. Then, the weapon roared. Projectiles tore free from the barrel in a storm, streaking across the battlefield like meteors. The first struck a nearby creature and detonated in a blinding flash. The shockwave hit Kai immediately after, shuffling at his chest like an ocean swell. The Voidkin reeled, scattering as radiant explosions ripped through their ranks. Tendrils disintegrated mid-strike. Spindly bodies collapsed into smoke wherever the shots landed. More followed, a relentless barrage carving through the Nightshawl's veil, each impact throwing another burst of light across the carnage. Where the horde had swarmed moments before, only scorched earth and fading wisps of shadow remained. Korric braced against the recoil, boots dug into the dirt.
Ha!
He swept his gaze over the scorched field.
Now that's how you make an entrance.
Another salvo burst from the cannon. Eira shielded her eyes, shouting, "What is that thing?" Korric's grin was wild. The cannon's glow reflected in his eyes.
This?
He adjusted the angle with a grunt, the weapon already cycling up for another blast.
This is bloody art, love. Violent, beautiful art.
He laughed like a madman and tore through what remained of the Voidkin front line with the next round. Eira swung back around. "Blow the gates, Kai." Kai spun toward the entrance. The crystal was already blazing in his grip as if it had already understood his intention. He raised it toward the towering doors, but stammered as movement flashed at the edges of his vision. 2 shadow creatures lunged from opposite sides, their forms stretching as they came. 2 arrows streaked past his shoulder and struck true, punching through both creatures. The Voidkin shrieked and dissolved into wisps of black mist that drifted harmlessly across his vision. Kai looked over his shoulder. Raven was perched there, knocking another arrow. She spared him the barest glance before turning to her next target. Kai whipped back around and raised the crystal. Energy surged from his chest, through his arm, spiraling into the crystal until every nerve burned white-hot. The blade's glow swelled, the hum beneath his fingers climbing to a resonant growl, power coiling tighter, demanding release. He aimed at the gates, and then a lance of searing light erupted from him, striking the hulking mass of iron. The metal screamed, and the witch's wards held in brief defiance before shattering into a cascade of dying embers. Voidkin scattered from the burst of light. A second later, the hinges buckled with a tortured screech. The gates convulsed, warping under the strain. The massive slabs of blackened steel tore backward, gravity wrenching them inward. They slammed down in a thunderous cascade. The impact rattled through the ground beneath Kai. Dust and debris billowed into the air as the echoes of the crash reverberated like a war drum. The energy drained from Kai's limbs all at once. His vision blurred, his knees buckled, but Eira was there before he hit the ground. her grip firm on his arm. "You all right?" she asked. Kai forced a nod, though his legs continued to tremble beneath him. "I'm fine," he rasped. "It just takes a lot out of me." The crystal's glow dimmed. The shadow creatures flanked them, gathering for another strike. Before they could advance on Kai and Eira, Korric's cannon roared again for another volley. The veil tore open. Shadows shrieked and sizzled at the edges of the light. Korric's voice boomed over the chaos.
"Oi, get to moving. Nothing gets past me."
Kai met Eira's eyes. Whatever doubts she might have carried back in Barandark, he didn't see them in her now. Instead, there was simply a commitment to the plan. No turning back now. Beyond the courtyard, the entrance to the Black Sentinel yawned open, daring them to enter. They dashed toward it. The vestibule was so vast that it seemed to swallow them as they entered. Its vaulted ceiling was lost in shadows. The air was thick with the scent of musty carpets and malignant magic. Massive pillars lined both sides of the chamber, carved from the same black stone as the exterior, veined with the dark crimson that looked like frozen veins filled with blood. Between the pillars, alcoves held empty pedestals. The floor was some sort of polished obsidian or marble, smooth as glass, reflecting the faint glow of runes crawling up the eerie pillars. Kai couldn't make out the old tongue on them. At the far end, a staircase swept upward in a wide, unbroken arc, wide enough for 6 men to climb abreast. Once it might have been carved for processions, but now the polish had gone dull and gray with neglect, and the darkness at its top swallowed the stairs whole, no landing or turn in sight, just the promise of more climbing into the black. Kai pointed toward them. "There," he said. They had barely taken a step further when the sharp sound of metal striking stone caterwauled through the chamber.
"I will suffer no intruder,"
a deep voice echoed out. From behind a far pillar, Morvanys emerged and turned toward them. Her full plate armor gleamed in the dim light. A 2-handed sword was strapped across her hip. A spiked gauntlet rested with casual confidence on the hilt of it, like an executioner considering the effort, or lack thereof, before the strike. She unclasped the strap with her other hand, allowing the deadly end of the sword to drop. It scraped along the ground, sending great sparks into the air behind her before she hoisted the weapon over her shoulder. "Remember what I taught you?" Eira whispered to Kai. Morvanys grimaced.
"This tower shall be your tomb."
There was no slow advance like there had been during the first escape. Morvanys surged forward explosively. Her greatsword came down in a vicious arc, splitting the air with a howl of wind. Eira shoved Kai aside, raising her shield. The magic barrier glinted bright. The impact drove her backward, boots scuffed across the floor. Her shield held, but barely, and she twisted away before the full weight could crush her into the polished stone. Kai rolled to his feet. The crystal shuddered wildly in his grip. Morvanys pivoted, ignoring Eira. Her sight fixed on Kai, and she rolled her shoulders, raising her weapon once more.
"Let's test you."
She lunged. Kai brought up his dagger just in time. Steel met the magic-fueled crystal in a burst of white light. His arms shuddered with force. Feet slid backward. He twisted, deflecting the sword's edge just enough to slip the angle, but the force knocked him off balance. Morvanys, however, recovered instantly. She spun the blade around in a horizontal swipe. Kai, already tipping, dropped flat. Her sword hissed overhead. He shot forward beneath her, between her legs, and before she could back away, He hooked an arm around her lead calf and ripped it to his shoulder while crossing his feet behind her far knee and around her hip.
You rat,
she shouted. She tried to step out of his grip, but he didn't let her go. Instead, he drove his hips upward and extended his legs explosively. Her balance broke. She swayed backward before staggering forward, and in a desperate bid to stay upright, she drove her blade into the floor ahead of her. Kai was already climbing. His hand found purchase on her cuisses. Her flank was exposed, and the opportunity presented itself. He thrust the dagger. Before it could find her flesh, Morvanys' gauntlet caught him in the ribs. Thwomp! Kai's breath left him in a rush. He hit the floor hard. The crystal clattered across the marble. He rolled away and scrambled for the weapon while Morvanys was focused on removing her blade from the crevice it had made in the stone. Eira was moving fast, closing the distance in 3 strides. Morvanys tried to turn and bring the two-hander around, but the weapon was too cumbersome, and it was far too late. Eira slipped inside her guard toward a gap beneath the shoulder plate where her armor met the leather beneath. Eira twisted her body and put her full momentum behind it. She drove her short sword into the seam, and it passed cleanly all the way to the hilt. Morvanys gasped. The dark enchantments in her armor flickered and died. Eira kicked up, planting a boot against the dame's hip, and wrenched the blade free. Morvanys staggered backward. Blood welled through the gaps in her plate, and her grip on the two-hander loosened. Kai raised the crystal, pointing it at Morvanys. "No, Kai, don't." Eira's hand closed around his arm. "She'll only come back anew. Let's just go. Make her work for it." Kai nodded and lowered the blade. The light dimmed. Together, they ran for the staircase.
Fools!
Morvanys' voice rasped behind them, wet with blood.
Millennia ago, Lady Fate herself had promised I will not fall to any blade.
She pressed a gauntleted hand to her chest. Kai glanced back. Morvanys knelt where they left her, bleeding but conscious, watching them go. She didn't pursue, but Kai knew it was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, Korric stood at the center of the storm. The cannon he called Eric's Revenge roared as radiant streaks carved through the darkness, punching through layers of Voidkin. Shadow erupted into mist in thick layers. Another creature lunged at his flank. He swung left while firing, and it disintegrated mid-leap. A wild laugh tore from his throat, fully unrestrained. Gods be damned. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this alive. A brief lull fell over the battlefield as Voidkin regrouped in the distance beyond the range of the weapon. As the opportunity presented itself, Korric reached into his cloak and pulled out a wad of smoke leaf. He tucked it into his cheek. Ahead, the Voidkin coalesced into one mass. Wings and talons erupted from its writhing body, and it lifted into the air.
Right then, you ugly sod.
He grinned around the jaw.
Let's see how much of you I can vaporize in one go.
The Voidhawk screeched and dove toward him.
Oh yeah, that's it.
He bellowed.
Come down, Korric.
The cannon thundered across the promontory.